Okay,
So let's
great.
begin. Yeah.
Sure.
So Rohini, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I know we had a few problems with Instagram, but I think YouTube is as good a platform as any. So to begin, I'll just give a short introduction about you. As good a platform as any. So to begin, I'll just give a short introduction about you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, there seems to be a lag.
Short
I could hear
introduction.
you when you were speaking, but I can hear what you're saying now repeated.
Okay, it should be okay now.
Okay.
Is there a lag?
No.
No. Okay. All right. So, as I was saying, let me give a short introduction, a brief introduction about you. Rohini Rajagopal is a Bangalore-based writer. She's written extensively. Her articles have appeared in publications such as The Quint, Midday, Tweak India, UR.life, and Women's Web. And in 2021, her book titled What's a Lemon Squeezer Doing in My Vagina was published. And I think I read it soon after that. And I read this book when I myself was going through fertility struggles. And it really did touch a chord with me. As I was telling you yesterday, I was looking for books which I could relate to, and there were many books by foreign authors, and the experience of infertility abroad. But I think this book is the only one I found actually, which was talking about like an Indian woman's journey. So it was very unique and it was very special. And I remember reaching out to you at that time also. And I can't believe like 2 years afterwards, we are here. So thank you so much for this, for agreeing to do this.
Thank you so much, Pragya, for having me. And thank you so much for reading my book and all the kind words that you just shared. And I think I feel really privileged and honored to be a part of this conversation because what you're doing is something very important and very necessary to talk about difficult subjects, so called taboo subjects. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Thanks. So let's begin with like your journey. Like, how old were you when you decided to have children? Because like people's perception is that if you're very old, then if you wait for too long to have children, then obviously you're going to have infertility issues. So, what was your experience?
So I got married when I was 25. And then we waited for a couple of years because we wanted to enjoy the our married years, the initial years. And I think around when I was 27 or 28 is when we started trying. And nothing was happening. So we waited for a year because I knew that. So typically, what doctors recommend is that you have unprotected intercourse for 12 months before you seek any kind of medical intervention. That is the norm. So I waited for that long and still nothing was happening. And by then I was in my late 20s and I was beginning to get a little anxious because this was in my head that I had to be a mother before I turned 30. And so what we did was we went to a fertility clinic. But at that point, the real intention behind going to the fertility clinic was not really to choose a procedure or an intervention, but it was to rule out any kind of issue. So I just assumed I will go to the doctor and I will rule out any difficulty or any issue. And then if everything is fine, we can go back to trying, naturally and just let nature take its course. So that was so around that time is when I started trying to conceive a baby. So I was not very old when this whole journey started.
Yeah, yeah. So that's like another thing I think, socially, a lot of women are told that you need to prioritize this because you're young, and there's a lot of stigma attached to like older mothers. And I
Mm.
was 40 when I conceived, and I can't really say that a lot of people were not surprised. That I had just started trying to conceive, and then I had actually conceived. So, but the thing is, you were so young, and you tried for a year, and then you went to the doctors. So, um, was it only the fact that you had tried naturally for like 12 months that made you seek external help, or were there some other factors also?
I think there was some amount of, let's say, social pressure and family pressure that was beginning to play on my head. And I think by the time we went to a doctor, it had been 3 years. So it's like 2 years after we got married, we started trying, and then we had spent a year trying. So it had already been about 3.5 years by the time I went to a doctor. So, and I was, like I told you earlier, the idea that I had to conceive before I turned 30, because I was also under the impression that fertility tends to decline, and maternal age is one of the most important factors as far as conception is concerned. So all these things were playing on my head, and it's also the kind of person that you are, right? I mean, I was very like, this is a goal, this is a target, and I have to meet that, fulfill that. So that was what was going on in my head, and I think my mother also sort of encouraged me to see a doctor, believing that at least if we know that there is something that is wrong, then we can fix it because you're very young, and so the odds of overcoming that are much higher, instead of waiting for a year. So I think that was the main thing. I totally bought into the pressure.
Oh, I see. Okay. Because, like when I was diagnosed with like unexplained
Mm.
infertility, I just kept thinking, because it's unexplained, there's always a chance of conceiving naturally, because it's unexplained. Like they can't really say that there's something wrong with me. So, and I guess that's why also I didn't like seek, any procedure, like to do anything. I just thought it's unexplained, and because they can't explain it to me, that I can just sort of keep trying. So, like, do you, like in your opinion, someone who's going through this because it's all about hope also, and
Yeah.
so how what would you say to these women who have like hope, and they've been diagnosed with this unexplained infertility, which anyways it's a diagnosis that doesn't make sense. What would you say from your experience, because you decided to go for IVF very proactively, you know
Mhm.
and,
No, yeah. And no, it wasn't like that. So yes, I got this diagnosis of unexplained infertility, and actually, it's a very difficult diagnosis, because if you know that there is something wrong, something very specific, then you can work towards fixing that problem. But I felt like we were groping in the dark, and nothing seemed particularly wrong, and nothing was particularly great either. My AMH levels, which is again a very important hormone which indicates the quality of your egg and the number of eggs that you have, it was on the lower end, but everything was borderline. So nothing was particularly great, nothing was particularly wrong, everything was borderline. And I received this unexplained infertility diagnosis, which is very frustrating, very confusing. You don't know what to do, whether something needs to be done and you should just wait and watch, or whether
yeah,
you need to take action proactively. So I began with, so what they do is, typically, if you're that age and if this is a diagnosis, then I think the first line of treatment is something very minimal, very non-intrusive. So they said, let me
yeah,
just put you on, the doctor said, I'll put you on pills to boost your ovulation. I tried that for 3 months, and I was not very convinced about its utility.
I
And
see.
then we progressed towards IUI. So I did 3 or 4 cycles of IUI before I moved to IVF, and that itself took almost another year. So I went into IUI thinking that IUI would work, because I mean, we both were young, we don't have any issues, and IUI is minimally invasive. So it does
Mm,
not require the kind of hormonal pills or injections or the kind of very intrusive procedures that IVF involves. So
yeah,
I really thought in a couple of months I'd be pregnant. That is what I was expecting, but
yeah,
that didn't happen. And there is a thing about IUI, that if it's supposed to work for you, they say it'll work in the first 3 or 4 cycles. I'd already gone past that number, and I had not seen any success. It was not like I conceived and then I miscarried or anything. I just didn't conceive at all. So it was at that point that I decided that we needed something more concrete. And I was concerned about time slipping by, and I knew that age is a big factor, especially maternal age. Now,
yeah,
I can't offer a solution or a certain piece of advice for somebody um, who has this diagnosis, because there are so many factors, especially when it comes to fertility. It's your lifestyle, your nutrition, your age, your partner's health, your own, belief systems, what you believe about fertility, about your body, about what you want from your life. So all of these interact in a very complex manner, and they play on your mind before you decide what you want. But
Mm.
I think it's important to be cognizant of biological facts. There are certain biological facts that we cannot argue with, be it maternal age, be it the quality of your eggs or the number of eggs, or all those things. But if you're cognizant of that, and if you take an informed decision either to proceed with fertility interventions or not, then that makes more sense to me. In my case, I this is the route I wanted to take.
Yeah. So basically, making an informed decision, like speaking to your doctors, looking at your test
Data, yeah.
data. Yeah. Okay. A data driven approach. So, but what would you say? Because, infertility has, a cultural kind of negative connotation, not just here, but, in a lot of other places. And women who are going through infertility, for whatever reason, they have this sense of, some women feel like defeated, like they aren't able to do something that everybody, all women seem to be doing, so of course this is conditioning. It's not that we actually truly believe this, but social conditioning and societal pressure, sometimes parental pressure and things. So would you did you face any of that? And did how what would you say to women who are facing that? Because whether you choose to go through IVF or not, or you choose to do something else, or even women who are choosing to stay like childless, with not
Yes.
having, so there's a huge stigma attached to it still. So, what would you say to women, who are dealing with this?
It's a very difficult experience, and I certainly felt that. I felt like because I was not able to, excuse me, because I was not able to conceive naturally, I felt like I had failed. As a woman, as in the marriage, I felt like I had let down my extended family. So it was an obligation that I was expected to fulfill, and I was not able to fulfill that. So I definitely saw it as a limitation, as a failure. And the
That,
thing with infertility is that there is a double stigma, Pragya. One is not being able to conceive spontaneously or naturally, and the other one is seeking treatment or seeking a medical intervention to conceive is also looked down upon. And that is looked at with a lot of judgment, right? It's
mm,
considered, artificial and, all of that. So there is a lot of stigma attached to that as well. And this whole going to the clinic, going through these procedures was a top secret mission in our lives. We didn't share it with anybody else. I would put all my files in a thick plastic cover so that you couldn't see what I was carrying. And I was so worried about being caught out, of being accosted by somebody in the hospital who knew me. So all these things were running in my head. The whole experience was shrouded in stigma and shame. And
mm,
I feel like I never really lost the shame until I started talking about it, until I started writing the book. That's when I was able to lose that
yeah,
feeling that I was not, it's in some way that I was not worthy enough. I
mhm,
only lost it when I started speaking about it. So to women who are going through it, like you said, it's all the negative cultural baggage that we get from families, from movies, from books, from everywhere, which is passed on, and which you sort of imbibe, and that becomes part of the way you look at the world, right? And there's also the other thing about fertility is that becoming a mother in our culture, especially, is considered a blessing. So if it is a blessing, then what is the opposite of not becoming a mother, right? So I also it was very personal because I was like, am I not a good person? Am I being punished for some kind of past misdeed? Is this a penalty for some bad karma? Don't I deserve this? All these questions were in my head, and it's nothing unique to me. I'm sure women who go through infertility, especially for a sustained period of time, go through all these emotions, right? So I think it's very important to unpack the cultural baggage that comes with infertility and to tell yourself, and this is what I say all the time, it's not personal. It's like any other ailment or any kind of bad luck that you might experience or any kind of difficulty that you might experience in your life. So
yeah,
it's not personal. You have not been singled out to be taught a lesson, by the universe, and in no way does it make you less
mm,
of a person or less of a woman. It's not a failure of your womanhood not being able to conceive
right.
naturally. Yeah. And the other thing, now I'm saying this in hindsight, and I'm one of those. lucky ones, I did conceive through IVF. So, but the thing is, there are many routes to fulfillment. I didn't have this perspective when I was 28 and going into that fertility clinic day in and day out. There are many ways to find fulfillment and joy in your life, and there are many routes to parenthood. So it doesn't have to be this. I mean, there is adoption, you can be a pet parent. There are so many ways in which you can imagine your life.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately, a society will tell you this is the template. Get married at this age, have children by this age, preferably one boy, one girl, or whatever. That formula is already pre decided, and you just have to execute it. But that we need to question and we need to change that, so that we don't buy into these pressures. And parenthood is great. I mean, I'm every day I'm grateful for my son, but there are many ways in which you can find that fulfillment in life.
Oh, that's wonderful. So basically, shift your perspective, shift the
Yeah.
focus.
So, yeah.
Very.
Yeah.
What about like for mental health? Because your mental health is at a all-time low during that time.
Mm.
Did you ever consider therapy? It's because I feel therapy really helps. If you get a good therapist, and I feel that really helps. Did you ever consider going to therapy? Because therapy
No.
also comes with this, stigma. So then,
Yeah.
you never considered therapy.
No, I never considered therapy, but I'm told at least in some clinics, I think they offer the services of a counselor and it's part of the treatment protocol, which I think is excellent and it's really a must because the psychological toll of infertility is it's humongous. You question your self worth, your self esteem, even though on the outside I felt like I was successful. I had a job, I had my partner, I had this life that we had created together, but in every way, I felt like all of that didn't matter. That didn't count. Only this counted. Only becoming a mother counted, and it's a very narrow way of thinking because when you don't have that one thing that you want, all the other things in your life just dissipate, right? And you're only focused on that one lack and absence, which is a very human way of looking at it. I did not seek help. I should have. And maybe that ecosystem was not there of seeking help and therapy. This is see, my son is 9 years old, so this is like 10, 12 years ago. But yeah, I would actively encourage somebody who's going through infertility to seek help, whether they're going through IVF or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, sometimes just a lot of women don't have the resources to actually look for a therapist and, go to a therapist. But I think, like just talking to close friends is also something, just opening up and talking to close friends is also something that's useful. Because I remember when I was going through infertility, there were a few friends that I did speak to, and I think that really helped. Of course, I went for therapy also, but I think just talking about it and then sometimes you come across other people who are going through something similar, and
Mm.
you just feel like there's somebody else who can understand you. Otherwise you just feel so kind of alone and sometimes isolated also,
Yeah.
especially if you live in an environment where they are kind of judging you, or like an unhealthy environment, you know
Right. Right. Yeah.
so this, you spoke about the like the mental strain of infertility. Tell me about the physical strain that the process of IVF, how is it to actually go through it? Because we all know that it's very taxing on the body. But again, when doctors were pushing IVF on me and I wanted to speak to like a real person, a woman who had actually undergone this. I couldn't find many women. I found maybe one woman, but what she told me about IVF was totally contradictory to what all the doctors were saying. The doctors were saying it's an easy process. It's like it's a magical process. You gain weight only because you don't exercise. It's not much. Not many hormones are injected into your body. Whereas this woman told me about, like, the kind of bed rest, and that she had to like undergo, and then the clinic visits and everything. Like I could feel that it was very different, like these approaches, this feedback. So do you remember how it was for you, and how was it like physically? What were the changes that happened in your body?
So simple is not a word I would use to describe IVF at all. There is nothing simple about IVF, and it's really like going through an obstacle course. So, because at every stage, your body is being tested, and then based on the result of the test, then you move to the next stage. So, you really feel like you're going through all these hoops, and you must clear every stage before you proceed to the next stage. So, it's very, it's really like your fertility system is being put through a performance test, and you have to deliver. I mean, in terms of, I think in any given IVF cycle, I would take like 50 injections,
Five.
and 50, yeah, 50, and 25 pills per day.
Oh,
So, yeah, 25. See, the protocol will vary from person to person and the doctor to doctor. And also, and they keep refining the protocol from one cycle to another. So, I'm just giving you my experience. I mean, this is not meant to be the guide, a guide to IVF. But yeah, so it's 50 injections, 25 pills. You're visiting every single day because they do blood work. And then based on your hormones, they decide what will be the dose of your what should be the dose of the injections, and then you take the injections. Sometimes after the blood work comes, you may have to go again to get supplementary injections, and then you go through a surgical procedure, which is oocyte retrieval, to retrieve the eggs from your body, and it is fertilized with the sperm, and
yeah.
that is done under anesthesia. And after that, it is fertilized and then put back into your uterus. Even after the embryo transfer happens, it's 15 days of it's the 2 week waiting period. A lot of clinics ask you to take bed rest, though the jury is out on whether bed rest is really required, because when a woman gets naturally pregnant, there is obviously no bed rest. You don't even know that you're pregnant until you miss the period. But these are all the precautions that they take, whether it's scientifically valid or not. So it's a very intense process. It's a very intense process physically and emotionally. And I remember the first time I tried to balance it all with my work. So I would go to the hospital, take my shots, then go to work. Then sometimes come back, take a second round of shots, and then go back to work. But I think the toll was it was so taxing that I decided it was not worth it. By the time I came to the last cycle, I took the last 2 weeks off because I just wanted to give myself some rest and some peace of mind while I was going through an IVF cycle. I felt like I'd earned that, given all that I was putting my body through. In terms of side effects, I did not really encounter too many in terms of weight gain or bloating. I was one of the lucky ones, but I've seen others. I've seen other women in the clinic with me who had severe pain because of overstimulation. So what happens is that you pump in these hormones and your ovaries get overstimulated and the hormones reach
Hmm.
a level that they're not supposed to reach. So then there's bloating, abdominal pain, weight gain, all of that. I did not have that problem because I did not experience hyperstimulation, but that happens all the time. And I think over and above the physical toll, it's like you go through all this, and then to get a negative pregnancy test or a negative pregnancy result is like climbing up a mountain and then just a free fall from there. So it's a very difficult process, and I think the most important thing for somebody who's getting into this is to understand the reality of an IVF cycle, not just what it entails, but also what its success rate is. In a good clinic, as far as I know, it's 30 to 40%. So it's not a magic cure at all. And it depends on many factors. It depends on your age and the protocol and also the skill of your embryologist, and it depends on many things. But there it's not a 100% guarantee. There is no 100% guarantee as far as fertility is concerned, and biology is not a perfect science, so nobody can answer that question for you.
Like, unfortunately, a lot of people, probably because of misinformation. No, because I remember it when when doctors were pushing IVF on me, they would talk about it as though it is, you will just have a baby in your hands in 9 months. They would use these words, and I. Oh yes, in retrospect, I always think that it's quite sad, for a woman, who might be in despair, and she might be frustrated and maybe even depressed, and then to hear a doctor, especially doctors, they come with a background of experience, and they know more than you, they've seen so much, and then you trust them. And if a doctor does make you feel like, okay, this is in 9 months you're going to have a baby in your hands, and you'll forget all the pain that you've been through after these 9 months. and then a woman goes through cycle after cycle, and the success rate is not very high. It's just it's sort of emotionally, it can break you emotionally also.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for women, like, because we've discussed, what women who are experiencing unexplained infertility, you've given advice for them, but what about women who are undergoing this difficult process of IVF, which is shrouded in secrecy, pain, no support groups usually?
Yeah.
What would you say to them? How, because they've chosen to do this, they want to do this, but it's just because they want to do this, it doesn't mean that they have to, like, sort of suffer in it. It is a
Yeah.
suffer, like, there's a lot of suffering associated with it. So what would you say to them? What's your advice for them?
Yeah, so I'm a little concerned about the language that doctors used with you. The idea of offering IVF as a sure shot, fail proof sort of strategy to have a child. That is not the case at all, and I'm surprised that that kind of language and vocabulary is being used, because that has not been my experience at all. And yeah, so coming back to so your question was how to deal with IVF when you're going through it, right? Yeah, I think.
The more
Sorry, the
and
emotions. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I think for me, this is some. I did not arrive at this wisdom. I did not have this wisdom in the first cycle, but sort of by the last cycle, this is the approach that I adopted, which eventually led to the birth of my son. One is that you have to acknowledge what you're going through, because when you're going through infertility, you are looking at your body as something that is as a failure, at something that is not performing at the level you want it to perform. There is a task that you wanted to accomplish and it is not accomplishing that task, and you're looking at it with a lot of hostility and frustration, and you are not showing any kind of love or compassion towards your body. That is usually the mindset with which you go into an IVF cycle. But I think really changing that stance and that approach in my head, I feel it helped me, like looking at my body with compassion, and also not just seeing it as the site of failure, but also appreciating and acknowledging the rigor of the IVF cycle and what I'm putting my body through it. So acknowledging that and appreciating that, my body and myself. So I always say this to anyone who reaches out to me for advice regarding an IVF cycle: give credit to yourself. You're going through one of the most difficult times in your life, so give credit to yourself and to your body for what it is enduring in this time. And and you're brave and you're strong for going through this. So acknowledge that. I mean, you deserve a pat on your back, and you deserve that holiday for this. That is one thing that I always emphasize. The other one is, yeah, again, get help. The other thing is that so when you are naturally pregnant, you don't even know what is happening, right? But when you're going through IVF, you have like this microscopic cellular level view of everything that's happening inside your body. So the day the embryo, the oocyte has been retrieved, the fertilization, the quality of the embryo, it's gone back. How is it supposed to grow? Has the cells expanded? So you have all this information and you're tracking it. So what happens is you feel very responsible for your pregnancy. You think, am I doing everything right? Am I drinking too much coffee? Am I not walk? Is the exercise okay? So you become very responsible. If you conceive spontaneously, you have no clue. I mean, you just find out when you get a positive HPT, right? But a woman who goes through IVF feels like she's responsible for making this cycle work. So there's a lot of guilt, especially when a cycle fails, you blame yourself, and there's a lot of guilt. So this is something I want to say. There is nothing much that you can do to either make a cycle work or to for it or cause it to fail. It's really not there is not much that a woman can do to sabotage a pregnancy. So
Mm.
don't worry about that. Yeah, it's not you. It's not you.
So I think
the, some of it
no.
is medicine, some of it is nature, some of it is it luck. It has to happen. All these three things have to combine, and it has to happen. But don't self blame, will not help. That's not the approach that you should take. So, but even then, I feel the emotions are very hard. It's the perfect recipe for an anxious mind to lose its bearings. Even otherwise, I was an anxious person, but I think infertility made it much worse. So, if you have people that you can talk to, that's great, because like you said, the whole thing is shrouded in mystery and secrecy. And my thing was, I would come out of this and pretend that it was all natural, because there was so much attached to,
Yeah. That's your
so
book
much
become.
value, yeah, attached to a natural pregnancy. That was going to be my approach. Obviously that didn't happen. But yeah, if you can get help either by talking to friends or by talking to a therapist, great, that's great. But yeah,
Yeah.
like you said,
Yeah.
it's not always available.
Yeah. So I'd really like to highlight what you just said, that, there's very little that a woman can do to sabotage a pregnancy. Because I think, like, I've listened to a lot of podcasts, when I was going through my own struggles, and I listened to a lot of podcasts during that time. And the amount of guilt that women have, and exactly what you said, did I drink too much coffee? Should I have sat or lay down more for a longer time with my legs up? You know, such small things, a woman can really beat herself up for that, for these
Yes,
small things. And those
yes.
things seem to loom so large, when you're in the process of trying to conceive, or if something goes wrong. So I think I'd really like to highlight that, because uh, it's a fact. And but the thing is that, when you're trying to conceive in whichever way, whether it's like, whether you want to do it naturally and it's not happening, or whether you're going through IVF, and whatever what the doctors tell you is that now you need to rest, and you need to, all the instructions are for you. And when ultimate if it doesn't happen, then you only blame yourself, because you just start, there's like, not only guilt, but there's self-doubt, sometimes there's self-loathing, all
Yes.
of it. And then, and that's why I'm really surprised, because one of the doctors actually told me, you're going to forget everything, when you have the baby in your hand, you're going to forget everything. And somehow I knew in my gut that that might not be true. So is that true? When you had your baby, did you forget everything, all the pain? Well, obviously not, because you wrote a book about it, a very good
Mhm.
book about
That's what I thought. If I had forgotten everything, I wouldn't have written the book. I found my healing through the writing. I did not find my healing by. I'm very grateful that I have my son. And the fact that I have my son in my life, I owe it to reproductive science, and I owe it to all the fertility procedures that I went through. So there is no taking away from that. And I'm truly grateful to the doctors and the clinics who helped me conceive, and to the science and the technology that is available that gave me this option. It may or may not have happened otherwise.
right.
But no, it is not a magical process by which you can erase all the pain and the trauma and all the negative things that you have, sort of internalized about yourself and about your body. You can't undo that. That does not get undone in a magical moment with your son. That's a totally different journey of motherhood, and this is a separate thing. And the healing has to be sought in different ways. For me, it
Mm,
was writing. For somebody else, it's something else.
okay. Also, another thing I want to ask you is, because you went through the IVF, like, about 9 years ago or 10 years ago.
Yeah, yeah,
That's like almost a decade ago.
yeah.
And now the experience, that I had, and like, I'm speaking to a lot of other women also, like, the experience that we're having is that it's become very salesy. Like, doctors, at the moment they see somebody over 35, IVF is the first thing that they suggest, not even IUI, not even stimulation, or nothing. It's just IVF that they suggest. So it's become very salesy. And sometimes a lot of women who end up going just to understand the process a little bit more, the process of reproduction. Maybe they want to try other things, or they just want to understand the process a little bit more, make an informed decision. Sometimes women who are in this mindset, they go to doctors, and the doctors, again, sometimes they're very salesy, sometimes very aggressive about IVF. Sometimes they just they're blatantly lying about the success rate of IVF. In Especially if a woman is going alone for a consultation, and I was going alone for the consultations also. So, do you think, like, what that I assume that that's not your experience. That was not your experience.
Mhm.
Things have, like, really changed now. So what do you think about that? what do you why do you think it's like that now, where IVF is not put forth as a therapy, like, like something which is, that you can try, something that you can try to get what you want, but something that will definitely give you this baby. And now they're portraying it as that, as something that's like, this is the only thing that's going to work, and they're not focusing
Mhm.
on what the woman is going to go through, what the real aspect of it. So why do you think that is? And if a woman is going through this, then how can she stand up for herself? Like, how can she advocate for herself? Because
Mhm.
in my experience, it was that I was finding that, I'm paying for these consultations, I am booking these appointments, and I'm having to go into these into these sessions with these doctors, and eventually it's almost like me versus them, that I am standing up for myself, whereas they're just saying, no, no, there's nothing right with you, you're too old, your AMH is very low, you have fibroids also, this is never going to happen for you, and only I can give you a baby. So eventually, like, really having to stand up for myself and say that, look, I would like to not make a decision in a hurry. A lot of doctors, I would meet them on Friday and they would ask me to come in on Monday to begin the IVF cycle. That's the kind of the hurry and the anxiety that this whole process is kind of generating. So how
Mhm.
can women, in your opinion, how can women, like, really advocate for themselves, stand up for themselves?
Yeah, I mean, it's very disconcerting if that is the approach that you have encountered, because that has not been my experience. Though I do know that because fertility declines very drastically, very rapidly after the age of 35, I think doctors sort of propose IVF, as the first line of treatment. Though I do think that you need to consider what the woman or what the couple is really looking for, and
Yeah.
what they want out of this whole journey. So that is very disconcerting. And also, I think this explaining in detail what this entails, or uh, trying to look at what could be the psychological toll of a procedure such as IVF, or the success rate of an IVF cycle. Sort of giving people a reality check, having that kind of in-depth conversation. I don't think that's part of our hospital culture, right? Doctors typically don't invest that kind of time and effort in their consultation. So that probably explains some of this, sort of push towards, one direction. Though, because it's a very big life decision, right? And it's very important that doctors find that time to have the conversation. If the main consultant is not available, then maybe, have somebody else who can have a counselor who can explain to you what are the pros and cons, and what does the success rate look like, and things like that. And we see these stories all the time of women conceiving later in their 30s, or conceiving without any intervention despite being told that their AMH was too low. So we see those stories, though I completely understand that the odds of success do fall
Right.
after a certain age, and that's a fact. If it happens, great. If it happens without any intervention, that's great, but your chances are always better when you're younger, and your everything is the values are better. So like I said, for me, the most important thing is to take an informed decision, and you have to educate yourself. um,
Mhm.
the
Right.
internet is there, all the resources are available on the internet. So you have to read up, you have to come armed with information and facts when you are going into one of these consultations. Get second opinions, speak to a wide range of doctors, speak to others who have gone through the process, which is why I felt it was so important for me to write and share my own story, because I wanted to cast some kind of light on what this entails. See, now we're seeing that kind of opening up with mental health, right? People are talking about going through depression,
Mhm.
bipolar, whatever. So you have some idea of what it means to be at the
Mhm.
receiving end of one of these things. So that's why I wrote this narrative, because to cast some kind of light on the whole, on the world of ART, on assisted reproductive technology. So I think it's important to, and this conversation too is part of that, right? To shed some light so that people can take a more informed and a more educated decision about their body and fertility. It's not, I would never say it's simple or easy, or it's a one shot thing. Just the other thing that I hear all the time now is freeze your eggs. Just freeze your eggs and then you can wait. and have a child whenever you want without understanding the financial, the physical cost of freezing your eggs. And egg is one thing, it's one component, it's a very crucial component of conception, but it's not everything. That still does not guarantee that you will have a baby at 45. If you decide that now you are ready and you want to have a child, it's still not a guarantee. So there is an element of, there's a lot of uncertainty when it comes to any, biological process. Be aware of that. Just be aware of all the factors and all the, um, the criteria that go into this, and take a
Mm.
decision based
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah. And I would also just like to hold up. I got the book on Kindle, and it's I love the fact that it's a memoir of infertility. You have like the word vagina and infertility, two words that nobody wants to say. You have it on the cover itself, and so I like highly recommend this book to everybody. And believe it or not, I have recommended it in other forums, and this is the book everybody notes down. Like, this is the name
Oh,
everybody.
thank you so much.
It was a wonderful book, and like talking to you, it's like revising the book. Like a lot of the things that you've spoken about, you've written about them so clearly in the book, and I think that's why it touched a chord with me, because uh, like usually, like when you're going through infertility, everything is a statistic. You know,
Mm.
when you're pregnant, everything is actually a statistic, right? Like, you hear about morning sickness, but then when you're actually pregnant, then it's all day sickness. Sometimes it's all day sickness. So there's so many things that just remain statistics when you're trying to conceive, and then even once you conceive, whether you're going through IVF, all of it is just statistics. What's missing is the human element, which is what I think
Mm.
I craved, and that's why I read this book. I was looking for different resources where I could like make a human connection. So I think your book really fills that gap beautifully. Like it's written with no pretense. It's written with like a lot of honesty in the pages. Like, so it's a wonderful read, and I would recommend it to everybody.
Thank you
Is
so
there,
much.
yeah, I feel like we can just like talk for a long time. Is there anything you would like to say before? Because I don't want to keep you, we're already over time. So is
Yeah.
there anything you'd like to say?
No, thank you so much, Pragya, for everything that you've said. You've been so generous with everything related to the book. Thank you for having me. Thank you for hosting this. No, I think the main takeaway, even when I was writing the book for me, was that to communicate, because I felt completely alone and isolated when I was going through it. I believed I was the only one in the entire universe who was experiencing
Yeah.
infertility. Obviously, that's not the case. It's very common. I think 1 in 10 couples who are trying to conceive in urban India experience difficulty with conception. So it's a very common experience. And after I wrote it, so many people in my own circle, people whom I have known all my life, have come forward and shared their stories. So everybody has had some kind of encounter. It could have been a miscarriage, or it could have been, like some months and years of waiting when you believed it wouldn't happen and then eventually it happened. But because nobody talks about it, you feel you're the
Yeah.
only one. So I really, through the book and through all these conversations, I hope we can extend our solidarity with others who are going through this and assure them that they are not alone. And we need to normalize these kind of, conversations and offer our support when possible.
And where can people reach you? Like, if somebody wants to just tell you how much they liked the book, or anything else, if they want to reach you, where can people reach you?
Instagram.
Instagram.
My On my Instagram handle, I'm usually very responsive.
Okay. And I will link your Instagram like handle in the notes for this
Sure,
conversation.
sure.
Well, thank you so much, Rohini. This has been like excellent. This has been really nice. And like again, the book is wonderful, and I'm looking forward to your other books, like the next book that you're working on. And
Fingers
I
crossed.
sorry.
I said fingers crossed about the next one.
Yeah. And yeah, looking forward to all the great work that because I've read a bunch of your articles also. You're on YouTube, you've done TEDx talks and things like that. So wonderful work that you're doing. And I'm looking forward to seeing what else is in the future. So thank you so much for
Thank
the
you.
time, for your time. I know you're busy. So thank you so much. I'm sure this conversation will strike a chord with other people and really help other people as well who are going through the same thing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Means a lot, Pragya.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.